I don't know the effort made by federal government, but I do know that parties in the election will make efforts to win election. There's nothing wrong in that. But federal government, I'm part of the federal government. I'm sure that if the president wanted to win Osun at all cost, I would be involved, and I would have been there, and the governor would have known that it would have been different. Election is not won one day. Election is not one day. Election is a process. You can't just get up in the morning to go and win an election. President is a politician now. So people should not, when they say effort of federal government, what do you see to show that federal government is seriously interested to win this? If colleagues, governors, as of a party, think that by going there, will have a form of influence. It is to the people. I didn't see anything that anybody would tell the federal government did. Do you know what you are talking about? If federal government carried influence, do you not see 2019 influence in the Rivers State election, where you saw federal might, where the military was fully involved, where women came out naked, carrying their breasts, showing the soldiers, look at our breasts, you won't do anything here today. That's what they say when you see might, military might, federal might. Where you see where military base was turned to collation center. Then when they talk about federal might, come on, when they say people like Atiku, did his party not contest? If you were trying to support Adeleke, why did you feed the candidate? Their candidate had lost. You are now saying, oh, we thank God the Accord Party won. Are you a member of Accord Party? If you are talking about coalition, you would have done the coalition before then. You would have come to say, look, everybody in this party step down. We want Accord to win this election. Then you would have made sense. Then after the election, you say, oh, we won. Look, they won. What did the governor say? He said, President, I thank you for allowing a free and fair election. And for that purpose, I want to reiterate my commitment I made to you. I will still support you for a second term. So they are taking that, having said, oh, Adeleke, you have won. They are looking for a way to enter. Unfortunately, the governor is smarter than them. The governor said, don't come here. You are bad luck, people, don't come here. Don't come and tell me now that I have won. I have defeated Tinubu. If Tinubu did not allow free and fair election, would I have won? No. Because they allowed free and fair election. I was away, I spoke to the governor, even during the election. I spoke to him. I said, look, guys, he said, oh, look, everything's going on well. Fine. I said, I told you, why are you worried? All this, of course, I know. If one or two individuals are doing something, that does not mean that the federal government is doing the anything. When you see the force of federal government, go and ask those who have survived it. People like me, who survive federal might. It's not by saying they say. It's not true. I was there when I heard that the president said, no, you cannot stop their or close their account, something like that. Do you know what it takes for a president to come out and say, no, don't do this? If there was a federal might, he would keep quiet. He said, look, I allow everybody to do their job. But he came out to say, you have to say no. He could have said, I will not interfere. Tomorrow, if I do this now, you will tell me to do the same thing tomorrow. But he said, no, I will not allow this to happen. Even if it will happen, let it be after the election. And that tells you, and immediately he won, the president called him. Well, what does he tell you? And the governor said, look, president has just called me. congratulating me. I won my own election. Federal might. Nobody called me. Nobody called me. After I defeated them, nobody in the government then called me. And then somebody won. President is calling you, congratulating you. And then somebody has the guts, the temerity to say, oh, after they defeated federal government. I mean, you don't invite trouble for somebody who did not look for any trouble. Adeleke, remember, Adeleke has never been too critical about the government. You remember that? Ordinarily, Adeleke would have been with them if things had worked out well. So, I don't see anybody, these people who have no basis. I think they believe they want federal government. What happened in the FCT election? What happened in the FCT election? That one was rigged. If they had won, it would have been a template that they defeated federal government. When they lose, government manipulated the process. When they win small thing, they will have shown their mind. No, it's not done so. So be able to know that this government, for what I have seen, in terms of allowing processes to run their own way, I think this government, to some extent, you must give them that credit. Give them that credit. You don't need to like anybody who's...
I don't know how many of you have seen the interview done by the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, where he reacted to the outcome of the Osun Governorship Election. The argument presented by Nyesom Wike provides a strong counterpoint to the federal might narrative, but it should also be examined critically. The central weakness of the federal might argument is the assumption that the mere involvement or support of the federal government automatically determines the outcome of a state election. Wike's position challenges the assumption by pointing out that the elections are not decided on election day alone. Political organization, the popularity of candidates, local issues, party structures, voter mobilization, and the willingness of citizens to defend their choices all contribute to the final results. His reference to the Osun election is particularly important because it suggests that federal influence and electoral control are not necessarily the same thing. A federal government may have political influence, but that does not automatically mean it can dictate how millions of voters will vote. If voters are sufficiently determined, political influence from the center can be resisted at the ballot box. However, saying that federal might did not determine the Osun outcome should not be interpreted as saying that federal influence does not exist. The federal government remains enormously influential in Nigeria's political system. It controls significant constitutions, resources, and security structures, and its political endorsement can affect the calculations of candidates, parties, and voters. Therefore, the more convincing argument is not that federal might is dead, but the federal might is no longer an automatic guarantee of electoral victory. This distinction is important. For years, the phrase federal might has carried the impression that once the federal government backs a candidate, outcome of an election is almost predetermined. That belief can itself become a weapon because it discourages voters from believing that their vote can make a difference. If citizens enter an election believing that the result has already been decided by political forces at the center, many may become apathetic. The Osun experience challenges that mindset. Wike's argument also puts responsibility on politicians who routinely accuse the government of manipulating elections when they lose but celebrate the same electoral system when they win. That inconsistency deserves scrutiny. Electoral credibility should not be dependent on which political party benefits from the result. If an election is credible when your candidate wins, it should also be examined objectively when your candidate loses. At the same time, government should not receive credit merely because an election produces an unexpected result. The real test of electoral independence is whether voters are able to freely make their choices, whether electoral officials perform their duties without political interference, whether security agencies remain neutral, whether votes are properly counted, and whether legitimate results are protected. That is where the Nigerian electorate comes in. The most important counter to federal might is not another political godfather. It is an informed and determined electorate. When voters understand that political power ultimately comes from their votes, the psychological advantage of federal might begins to weaken. This is why the Osun election should be viewed beyond the victory of Governor Ademola Adeleke. Its biggest significance is the message it sends to voters across Nigeria. Do not assume that your vote is useless simply because powerful political interests support another candidate. The same lesson applies to Abia and potentially to other states. Political change does not have to happen simultaneously across Nigeria. It can happen gradually, state by state and election by election. The real battle, therefore, is not simply between the federal government and state politicians. It is between a political culture that tells citizens that powerful people will decide their future and a democratic culture that tells citizens that they have the right and responsibility to decide who governs them. So rather than saying federal might has disappeared, the stronger conclusion from Osun is this: federal might may still exist, but it is not invisible. And that is the significant democratic development. If Nigerians, particularly young voters, stop being intimidated by political structures and begin to participate actively, defend their votes peacefully, and demand accountability after elections, the influence of political godfathers will gradually become less decisive. The ultimate counter to federal might is therefore not state might, party might, or godfather might. It is voter might. When the people understand the power of their votes, no political structure should be powerful enough to make their vote irrelevant. So Wike should not be saying there was no federal might in Osun election. There were federal might. We're talking about the governors. How many of them? How many state governors did we witness? Aside from Anambra, Abia, Osun, and few PDP states like Oyo State and thereabouts, other states are controlled by APC. So we're talking about about 20-something state governors fully in support of their candidate in Osun State. And how many National Assembly members, including the leadership of the National Assembly, talking about the Senate President and the rest of them, coming to Osun. Do you know there's a way that you will intimidate someone, and that intimidation will make that person not even to participate in the process, will intimidate voters. But this man stood his ground to ensure that his people are not intimidated. And here Wike comes to tell you there were no federal might. No, there was heavy federal might. But the thing is that the will of the people was strong enough to withstand the federal might. And guess what? It was as though the whole thing, the nature was just against APC government and its candidate in Osun. And that was why everything that they tried to do to frustrate Ademola Adeleke proved abortive. Look at freezing the local government account. That was done how many years ago? About a year ago. That was not enough. They now came and freeze the state account. How do you describe that? That was like a week to the election. And how do you justify the fact that these were not manipulation from the federal government? So, the Minister of Federal Capital Territory, you cannot defend the fact that there were no federal might. But the will of the people was strong enough to withstand the federal might. Let me have your take. Drop them on the comment section. Please, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Do well to turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to get our videos as they drop. Till next, stay informed and stay connected.